What's up, New Orleans? It's Michelle with Our Revolution New Orleans. I'm here at Lafayette Cemetery, which is across the street from Commander's Palace on Washington Street. We're here for the Affordable Care Act Memorial, which is being hosted by the Gulf Coast Center for Law and Policy and the Progressive Social Network of Greater New Orleans. And it's a press conference featuring testimonies from Louisianians who have received life-saving benefits and care through the Affordable Care Act. Reverend Fred Kamer, who is a Jesuit priest and the executive director of the Jesuit Social Research Center of Loyola, will actually be emceeing the event. And right now we've got people starting to show up. And before we start showing up, I just wanted to make an announcement that Our Revolution, we have a website up and running. And if you're interested in joining or getting involved in the community within our group or whatever, go to ourrevolutionnola.org. It's a pretty simple page right now. We've got a Join Us. You can sign up. There's a survey which is going to start to help us prepare campaigns and platforms and really actually get a better idea of what's really important to you guys around New Orleans. So before we get into it, I'm going to turn the camera around, and I think about 10 minutes or so we're going to start. So thanks for joining us. Bye.
Oh, es una conferencia para la healthcare para americanos. So, él no sabe, pero hay personas allá que están mirando todas esas cosas aquí. Te puedes ayudar. Vale.
Para mantener la ley para las personas que necesiten ayuda con la salud.
Muy bien, correcto.
So if you're going to tell your story, you could come up and just stand kind of behind your father, Fred. We'll give his opening statement.
Can anyone tell their story? Can anyone?
Rachel's coordinating stories.
So just testing, great. If any, the ones that we've talked to about telling their stories, and they could stand behind Father Fred, and we're going to get going and try and get close together so we can all see you.
Yeah, where's Rachel? So he can talk to her. So she can.
She's coming up. She's coming up.
Okay, because it would be good to hear all the stories.
And then
Is that Rachel?
Okay.
Everyone needs to Pete,
Thanks you all for being here, and we're going to get started.
Since we're in the cemetery, I thought we might begin with a prayer. Bow your heads. Join me. Gracious God, we ask send your blessing down on all those who are buried here, that they may rest in peace. For their loved ones who pray for them and grieve them. Pray for the people of our state and our city who are without health care. Pray for those who are in elected office, whose responsibility is for the common good of all of us. We ask your blessing on all of those for whom we pray. We ask this in your holy name. Amen. We're gathered here this morning to let our elected officials in Washington know that their decisions regarding the Affordable Care Act have serious implications for our people. We want them to understand that we will not stand for unnecessary human suffering and death. Like so many other faiths, Catholic social teaching holds that every human life is sacred, and that access to health care is a basic human right. Our elected leaders have the responsibility to protect our rights and our human dignity. And we're here today to ask them to take that responsibility very seriously. Since it was enacted in 2011, the Affordable Care Act has saved and continues to save thousands of lives each year. Right here in Louisiana, more than 500,000 people rely on the Affordable Care Act to get preventive care, to treat current illness, and to avoid premature death. In the last 6 months alone, more than 385,000 low-income people in our state and 50,000 right here in New Orleans gained coverage through the ACA's Medicaid expansion, thanks to Governor Edwards' executive order. Since July of last year, 66 cases of colon cancer and 52 cases of breast cancer that otherwise may have gone undetected have been diagnosed in newly enrolled Medicaid patients in our state alone. Based on research from the Harvard School of Public Health, Louisiana is on track to save 846 lives in the first year of Medicaid expansion alone.
All right.
All of that progress, however, is in jeopardy as Congress moves forward with the repeal of the ACA without even coming close to a consensus on how they will replace it with, quote, something better. Even partial repeals have been shown to adversely affect millions of Americans and create chaos in the health insurance market for all of us. We cannot afford to have politicians in Washington put our lives in danger while they debate a replacement for the ACA. We deserve to know how they plan to improve the Affordable Care Act, cover more people, decrease costs for consumers before they disrupt coverage and care for millions of Americans. The Affordable Care Act is not perfect, but it is saving lives, including the lives of some of the individuals whom we will hear from today. These speakers are brave enough to share personal stories of their healthcare stories, personal details of their healthcare stories and their lives, and I'd like to thank them in advance for their courage. Finally, there's a fundamental principle in bioethics which states, first, do no harm. First, do no harm. As Congress stands at the precipice of repealing the Affordable Care Act without having in place a comparable and equitable health care law, it puts millions of lives at risk in this city, state, and across the nation. We say to Congress and the Trump administration, first, do no harm. First, do no harm. I'd like to first call on Jacqueline Brubaker, please.
Hello. First, I want to thank all the organizers of this event. It is through storytelling that we really get to people, and it's through storytelling that we can really change minds. So, again, my name is Jacqueline Brubaker, and 8 years ago, I had a major surgery, and at the time, I was uninsured. And even with discounts from the hospital and doctors, my bill was still around the range of about $25,000. 3 months later, I happened to appear on the game show Wheel of Fortune, and I won that game show, and I won $45,000. And had it not been for winning a game show,
I would not have been able to pay off those bills. I would be paying them forever. A few years later, I was diagnosed with melanoma, very serious type of skin cancer. Again, I was still uninsured, still paying that off, but it's through the ACA and Governor Edwards taking of the Medicaid expansion that I don't have to worry about huge bills and the people behind me as well. So, it's pretty simple. Americans should not have to go on a game show to be able to pay their medical bills. Bottom line. And it is absolutely shameful that we have Americans going bankrupt every single year because of their medical bills. Thank you.
Howdy, thank you for listening today, and thanks for coming out and showing support for people. I'm not going to go into a long story. I'm going to say something very, very simple. I had never had health insurance until I got the Obamacare Affordable Care Act insurance, and I was extremely glad to have it. And I've needed it for several things, which would have been very, very expensive had I not had it. Now, I would like to say I'm glad to be able to pay a premium that I can afford and have insurance. And I really like to say one very simple thing. I'd love for someone to explain to me how my life would be better if I didn't have insurance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you to the organizers. Thank you to everyone for showing up on a chilly, gloomy day. The Affordable Care Act allowed me to leave my career as a civil servant and follow my dream of being a freelance artist. My husband is also self-employed, and my job that I had previously had provided our health insurance. I was so excited to be able to try something new. I've had 2 good years. It's been a great ride, but clearly that's coming to an end. I want people to remember the story of the Affordable Care Act being an entrepreneurial engine is one that is rarely heard. Every commercial on TV has someone opening their new business. How do these people do this? They have to have stability in their lives, and part of stability is health care. That is part of how you build a life. So when you take that away, you shut down a lot of people. If you really are business friendly, if you really do support the economies of independent entrepreneurs, then you would support health care for all. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sarah. I'm an American citizen. I'm a mother. I'm a college graduate. I'm active in my community. And I also live with an inflammatory disease called asthma. And a lot of people don't think much about it, but more Americans than ever have asthma. And sadly, women make up 65% of those deaths every year. Because of the Affordable Care Act, I'm able to manage my asthma. The medicine I require every month without insurance costs me $500 in cash. I've had insurance for about 3 months. I pay around $100 for my medicine now. Without that, I don't know how I'm going to afford to live, like literally live. And because of the Affordable Care Act, I can afford to live and not become a part of that 65% and see my daughter grow up. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lena Como. I'm a local school teacher here in New Orleans. I have Crohn's and ankylosing spondylitis. I was 15 years old when I got sick, which was before the ACA was passed. And at that point, I was very fortunate to have parents who had good health insurance. And I was told that I could stay on my parents' health insurance until 25. And then after that, I would be virtually uninsurable. Before the age of 20, I saw 25 as a death sentence. Because of pre-existing conditions, I would not have qualified to have health insurance, even in a lot of cases through an employer. Any health insurance that I could have gotten would have been expensive to the point of being unaffordable. It would have had minimal coverage, and I would have had lifetime caps that I would have blown through in a few short years. The treatment that I have to take to stay in remission, for me to be alive and functioning and walking around, costs $22,000 a treatment. I have to have it a minimum of 6 times a year. So $130,000 a year for one medication. I have other medications that I take that are also very expensive, some of them which are several $100s a month. I have doctor's appointments that I have to go to. I have yearly testing that I have to do. Also with Crohn's especially, surgeries and hospitalizations are very expensive and extremely common. Without the ACA the last 4 years, I would not have qualified for health insurance. I would be very sick, if not dead. I definitely would be bankrupt.
Thank you to the Jesuit Social Research Institute for putting on this event. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. What I'll tell you before I tell you my daughter's story is that I grew up in England under a single payer insurance, and for 25 years before I relocated to the United States, neither I nor my family nor anybody I knew ever had to think twice about seeing a doctor, going to the hospital. It never became an issue of, do I pay my rent, do I buy food, or, do I pay unaffordable medical expenses. So now to my daughter's story. And this began shortly after I relocated to the United States. My first child was brain damaged by a botched attempt at a high forceps delivery. And because of that, she has significant brain damage that affects, she is considered cerebral palsy. She has vision problems, she has locomotion problems, difficulty walking. Because there was no single payer health care in the United States, I had to, while she was growing up, remain constantly employed by large organizations, universities, K-12 school systems, corporations. I could never be unemployed. And I also had 2 other children that I was keeping covered. Well, eventually she aged out of my coverage. And for a period of years until the ACA was enacted, she had very, very spotty coverage for the very frequent neurosurgeries that she needs. And the neurosurgeries, which correct a cerebral I've forgotten the name of it now, but anyway, it goes from her brain down to her stomach, okay, to deal with potential hydrocephalus. That breaks. The response time has to be a matter of hours. It cannot be one of these, oh, we'll wait for a few months, because it's blindness and then it's death. And because the family was helping her pay for this health care, we went bankrupt. And that bankruptcy was on our record, and it affected the entire family. It was my daughter's issue, but it affected all of us. Now, when the Affordable Care Act came along, my daughter, who is now 40, she's a college graduate. I'm immensely proud. Thank you. She was able to afford her own coverage. She's since had a neurosurgery within the past 2 years using the Affordable Care Act, but unfortunately she still needs another one. She has excruciating migraines and is now reduced to only being able to walk with a walker, and she's 40. But that new neurosurgery has been put on hold because of this whole uncertainty of the future of the Affordable Care Act. whether or not there will be an appropriate, effective replacement. So that's my daughter's story.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming and thank you so much to the organizers. My name is Anna Markham and I am a graduate student at Tulane University. The Affordable Care Act quietly saved my life. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in August of 2008 on the first day of my senior year of high school. The diagnosis, of course, is not a death sentence, but it requires a lifelong dependence on doctors, medical equipment, and medication. My first two thoughts after hearing the diagnosis were, will I be able to have children? And how will I pay for my medication if I can't get health insurance in the future? I cast my first vote in a presidential election for Barack Obama in November of 2008. When the Affordable Care Act was passed, I have never felt a greater sense of relief. Having the assurance that I would not be denied health care because of my genetics made me feel safe, whole, and valued as an American citizen. I no longer had to worry about my illness possibly bankrupting my family. Without insurance, basic diabetes medication costs roughly $1,600 per month. It has cost nearly $155,000 at minimum in medication to keep me alive since August of 2008. This does not include the cost of my insulin pump, continuous blood glucose meter, regular doctor's visits and blood tests. This does not include the life-saving 3-day hospital stay that cost upwards of $250,000. The cost of simply keeping me alive without insurance would have placed an unbearable financial strain on me and my family. No person with type 1 or 2 diabetes should have to consider the undue financial burden when choosing health care. This is why retaining and improving the Affordable Care Act is so unbelievably important. We are not burning houses. We still matter, and we are still here. Thank you, guys.
Deanna Bernard, Michelle Neal, Dan left.
Good morning. My name is Dan. I'm a full-time graduate student. As a full-time student, my means are limited and I live very modestly. If not for the ACA, I would not be able to afford the health care that enables me to keep functioning and continue my schooling. I'm simply one of many, many students throughout this country who simply wish to maintain our health and well-being so that we may complete our education and contribute to this society. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Jeannie Donovan and Sue Weischer of the staff of the Jesuit Social Research Institute and all of the other organizers. Sue, do you want to say something else too?
Yes, Rachel Gasson.
And Rachel Gasson. Thank you, Rachel. And remind all of you that elected officials need to hear from all of us. And ask you to bow your heads again for a moment of prayer. Lord, strengthen all of us to be a voice for the voiceless, to speak out for those whose health is endangered, about whom our whole community should care, and our elected officials above all. We ask this in your holy name. Amen. Thank you.
Can we ask a question? Like, what's that thing about they're trying to pass something where each state can decide individually on the Affordable Care Act? Is that any good?
Well, it's a bill put forward by Senator Cassidy and 3 other senators. It's probably going to create chaos because it means that potentially every time the government changes in a particular state, they could decide to get on the ACA or get off. There's a lot of questions about it. It's one of many proposals about which there is no agreement. That's the dilemma we face right now, which is there is no common agreed upon plan being put forward to replace the ACA. It's one of many proposals out there.
Thank you.
But thanks for asking. It's a good question. Thank you all. Sue?
Yeah, I just want to say that if you're not on Rachel's mailing list, then please contact Rachel or me after this event, and we'll get you on a list. And I also hope you all will stay because we have somebody from Nola.com that would like to talk to you. And thanks you all. We got to keep fighting.